My advice is give up now and get out of the way.
Lynn Williams, advice to other teams. Give up now and get out of the way. Gotham's coming for you, ladies.
That's right.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Good Vibes FC. I'm Sam US. I'm coming to you from the Women's Game World Headquarters in Vermont.
And I'm Lynn Williams, coming to you from New Jersey, where we are not in the headquarters.
No, we have established that you are in the hindquarters.
Exactly. The Hiney quarters. Have you ever played that game?
What game?
Hiney quarters.
No. Oh, is that when you sit in the chairs and you shoot quarters into everybody's beer cup?
No, it's when you stick a quarter in your, like, in between your cheeks, and then you try to, like, waddle over a cup and drop it in the cup.
Oh, I have played that. That's Kelly's game, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Hiney quarters.
Hiney quarters. That is like a Kelly O'Hara original brought to us somewhere from Georgia.
Yeah. Sana brought it to me. So same. Georgia.
Lynn, I was going to say, yes, you're in New Jersey right now, but you have been literally zipping all over the map. You were in Jamaica last week.
Zip, zang, zop.
Exactly.
Zoodle and dodge. I was in Jamaica. We went to Kingston, Jamaica, and we had a CONCACAF game there because we are in this tournament to qualify for the first ever Women's Club World Cup. And we were in Jamaica, and it was amazing. We did end up winning that game 13-0. But I think that the cool part about that, besides soccer, was just being in Jamaica. I've never been before. And if I was going to go, I don't know if I would have ever chosen to go to Kingston, Jamaica, where we were. And we were able to see Bob Marley's house. We got to do like the museum of that, which was really, really cool and kind of like near and dear to my heart. Obviously, Marley, my fiance, is named after Bob Marley. And I felt very connected to Marley's mom, who in 2016 passed away. So it was just like a really cool experience to be able to see Bob Marley's house, where he grew up, like all of his incredible records and just like his story, and being around just the Jamaican people and culture. Like everybody was so lovely. There was so much music, and I had a really good time.
That is so cool. I am so happy to hear that you had such a great time. Will you tell us a little bit more about your fiance Marley's mom and her relationship to Bob Marley, why she loved Bob Marley so much and why she would name her son after him?
That's a great question. She just like loved like Rasta music, loved like Bob Marley. She's Australian, white lady with red hair. She unfortunately passed away in 2016 from breast cancer. But like when I met her, she had a dread wig, and Marley had dreads when he was growing up. And when I met him, and his brother has dreads, and she just loved like the culture. And she went to Jamaica when she was younger. And when she was, I think in her 20s and early 30s, like she traveled around the world and had kids a little bit later in life. And she went to Jamaica and fell in love with just the culture and everything there, and ended up naming Marley after Bob Marley. And I just feel like, I don't know, so connected to her when I was there. And Marley loves listening to Bob Marley's music. And I don't know, it's just like a family thing. There's not really much.
That's really beautiful though, then. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. What a trip. What a game. What a story to tell. I'm so glad that you're back. I get to see you this week, which I'm very excited about.
Me too. Anything that you want to tell us? I know it's your birthday coming up.
Oh my God, just that it's my birthday on Wednesday.
Just that I'm turning older.
Just that the world has turned 32 times around since my birth or something.
Is there anything you would like for your birthday?
No, I just want to have pizza with all my friends. That's all.
Well, we're doing that. Anything else?
No, that's all. That's all I could ever want. I do want to do this podcast, though. So today on the podcast, the Shield has been won by the Orlando Pride. Gotham and the Spirit are tied on points in second and third, and a battle for a playoff spot, including an Angel City who was just docked 3 points. So we're going to dive into all of that scrappiness in the final 3 matches that we have coming up. Then the Champions League is returning. We've got a little primer for you so that you can be ready for Barcelona versus Man City, the match that will rock the world. Plus, we're going to give a little preview to all the matches ahead this weekend. And we got an email about the zombie apocalypse, obviously. How would Lynn, Becky, and I handle it? What roles would we play? I've thought about this a lot. I'm very excited to get into that. But let's start with the Orlando Pride, Lynn. They've won the Shield.
Go Pride.
Sorry. I'll probably take the lead on this section so that you don't have to talk about it. But The Pride beat the Spirit 2-0. They continue their undefeated season. They secured 57 points this season in the league. They are no longer catchable by second and third place, Washington Spirit and Gotham, who are both on 47 points. They've had a truly unbelievable 17 wins this season, 6 draws, 0 losses all year. An NWSL team has never gone undefeated the whole season. They do have 3 games left, so that could still remain true. They're playing Portland, Gotham, and Seattle. And they've secured their playoff berth as well. This will be their first appearance in the postseason since 2017. But Lynn, you and I actually won the Shield together 3 times in North Carolina.
3 times.
That was in 2017, 2018, and 2019. But I feel like winning it early is like, even winning it at all, it's like weird to celebrate because, I don't know, you like can't really go out. Like you kind of still have training, right? Like what does it feel like?
Yeah, well, I think that, was it 2018 or 2019? We were actually on an undefeated season, and then Britt Ratcliffe in the last literally minute of the game stole the ball and scored. So that was unfortunate for us.
Who was that against? Utah?
I think it was Utah.
The old Utah.
The old Utah back in the day.
Maybe Radcliffe haunting us, haunting our dreams.
I know. But I agree. I think that it's like an interesting position to be in, a very cool position to be in. I would think, though, that Orlando would celebrate, considering that they haven't been in the postseason since 2017. Like,
true.
The fact that you go from that to a historic season, like I would assume they're going to celebrate a little bit, right?
I mean, yeah, I'm sure that there's plenty of time between now and playoffs. I assume that they got a couple days off, and they probably went out. So yeah, good for them. That sounds really fun.
But I do think that it is going to be interesting moving forward. Like, are they going to keep the same roster every single game? Are they going to now change it up and rest some legs? I would assume, though, if I was them, they're going to keep the same roster, and they're like, no, we're trying to get an undefeated season. Yeah. But what do I know?
That's a good point, actually. I feel like that's interesting. They also don't have these midweek games that you and a couple of other teams like Portland and San Diego have. So I feel like actually staying on a good cadence of playing 1 game a week is exactly what their starters should do. That's a great amount of playing. The other thing I wanted to bring up about this, though, is the Shield championship curse, Lynn. That seems to apply to everybody except for some reason the 2018 and 2019 North Carolina Courage. Very few times have teams won the Shield and then gone on to win the championship. So obviously we'll see if Orlando can pull that off.
I do think that there is something, I mean, nobody's ever done it. Nobody's ever gone undefeated in the season, won the Shield, and then won the championship. That would be incredible, obviously, for Gotham's sake. I hope they do not. But I think there is something to losing a game in regular season and knowing how that feels and knowing how you don't want that to happen. And we kind of talk about this all the time, like in tournament play. Stay with me here. When you're in a Olympics or a World Cup where you could have the best group play, but it doesn't matter if you then lose in the first round or lose in the second round.
Totally.
So you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oftentimes losing helps you. It helps kind of gel the team together. You learn a lot from it. I do remember, this is going to take us way back to my high school soccer team, but one year we went undefeated the entire season, and then we literally lost in the first round of the knockout rounds. And I'll never forget, the newspaper headline was "Early Exit for the Panthers," because we were undefeated. We were the number 1 seed. We were supposed to go and win the whole thing, and we lost right away. But alternatively, the year that we lost really, really early, one of our first games of the season, we made school history for how far we went in the tournament, because I do think you learn so much and you're gelled together by the lessons you learn from losing, that then it kind of prepares you for these harder games and knockout round games. Okay, Lynn, let's talk about Gotham again. Y'all beat Bay 5-1. You scored 3 goals in 4 minutes. I want to know what the 4 minutes was like. How did you guys score that many goals in that quick succession? What happened?
I don't even know what happened either. I got subbed out, so I was watching. Go girls, go Batties. So Gotham hasn't scored more than 2 goals all regular season. And then we go to Jamaica, score 13 goals, and then come back and score 5 goals. So
Good timing for the floodgates to open up for the Bats, I'd say.
I'd say too. Historically, though, teams get scored on 5 minutes after a goal is scored on.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
So, like, it's either
That's just like urban myth. It's like,
like
the big 5 minutes.
It's such a women's soccer thing where, like,
I know. Wait, just so everybody knows what we're talking about. If you don't, the big 5 minutes happen multiple times throughout a game. It's like the first 5 minutes of a half, the last 5 minutes of a half, the 5 minutes after a goal is scored. Either way, it's like this really important time to like see how both teams respond to like a change in momentum or the clock winding down. So oftentimes you'll just refer to those moments as like the big 5.
The big 5. The big 5, which is also your nickname.
So the big 5, big 5 was also my nickname in Western New York in 2015 and 16.
Exactly. So that's a good tie there. But anyways, I do think that like, so asking like, well, what happened? Like, I just think it was the big 5 after every goal.
It was the big 5 for Gotham. Unfortunately, it was the small 5 for Bay. I think there is this other like intangible thing that happens during the big 5 moments where if you keep getting scored on, like it's almost like, is this even a tactical issue or is it just kind of like this feeling that happens that all of a sudden you're really vulnerable? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I just think that if you get scored on, you have a very short amount of time to figure out what happened and what's going wrong and what are like, there's always these like clues, quote unquote, for lack of better words, of like warning signs that something bad is going to happen. So I feel like sometimes there's multiple corners and you're like, if you don't figure this out, then one of these is going to go in. Or there's been multiple counterattacks. And if you don't figure those out, that's going to go in.
Right.
And you have like a small window of time to like figure out how to stop that. And I think when one goal goes in, then you're like, okay, do we adjust? And does the other team now adjust to our adjustment? Or you know what I mean? And I don't think that Bay in that moment was able to figure out what was happening. And we kind of like hit them with the same goal 3 times.
So it kind of, in this instance, it kind of was a tactical.
I think so.
Lack of adjusting.
Yeah. And then, well, I will say that Rose and Cece's goals were 2 back post goals. And then Esther's was a deflection that was, I think, going towards the back post. So it was more of I don't think they adjusted.
Yeah, I think that certainly Bay would say themselves that they let up they had some big holes in their defense during that period of time in that game that they lost 5-1.
And you're also pushing now at that point, pushing for a goal because they're trying to make playoffs.
Yeah, true.
And which
makes them even more vulnerable at the back.
Exactly.
Totally. That's true. Well, I'm glad for you that your team has such great momentum going into your final 3 games, going into playoffs, which you've already clinched. I do want to touch on some other big moments from the weekend. Temwa Chawinga scored again for Kansas City in a win over Louisville, tying Sam Kerr's single-season goal-scoring record at 18 goals. Sam Kerr's record was in 21 games out of a 24-game season. And Temwa's has been so far in 23 games of a 26-game season. So there's a little discrepancy in the number of games that they've played in. 18 goals, regardless of how many games you have, is a shit ton of goals. Pardon my French. But Lynn, it's so impressive that Temwa has done this. Like, it's her first year in the league. This many goals is absurd. She's like obviously a front runner for MVP. But as a goal scoring record holder yourself in this league, Lynn, how much is this record on Temwa's mind? She has 3 games left. Do you think she's like, I'm gunning for it, I'm going to score, I'm going to get to 19-20 and break the record?
I think that the record is just a byproduct of wanting to score goals and do your job. Like, I don't think that you go into things thinking, you know what, I have to win, I have to break this record. I want. I think you go into games saying like, I want to score a goal.
Right.
But I wouldn't say that was probably on the forefront in her brain. I think that she's more like, I'm just Temwa Chawinga and I'm going to score every single game.
Yeah. Like, it's not about the record as much as it's about like helping your team win.
Yeah. And just like doing your job well. I think that like she goes out there and is probably like, I'm just going to score today, which is like a crazy
She's doing
thing.
it.
She's doing it. Yeah.
She sure is scoring today. That is for sure.
I think every forward steps on the field thinking that is like, I'm going to score every game. And obviously, statistically, it usually doesn't happen. In Temwa's case, it is happening.
Right. I know. It's incredible. Well, I actually want to talk about how to stop it. And that brings us to our Olipop gut check of the week. It's brought to you by the legends over at Olipop. What is the best way, Lynn, to actually stop this goal-scoring phenom, Temwa Chawinga? We have a couple of options here. Some silly, some realistic. Just playing a low block. Do you think that could stop her?
I do think that teams should be playing a lower block on Kansas City and also Orlando.
Yeah. I think it's so aggressive and confident to not, which is like so NWSL, which is like sick. It's what makes the league so fun to watch, is that everybody's like, we're going to be the ones to stop it. But they're just not stopping it.
No, I just think when I'm watching teams play, I'm like, this is exactly what they want. They want a high press and then dump it into their front line. And then it's 1v1s all over the place. And I'm like, if we just have a lower block, then they will have to break that down, and it's not for speed. And if you are then kicking a ball in behind, well, yeah, then it's like, yeah, you broke down this low block, and I would rather lose that way than exactly how we know they are going to score their goals.
Exactly. It reminds me of Orlando's game. The counterattack was just so on and so dangerous. And when I agree that when I think about, I'm up against two of the most lethal forwards right now who are in great goal scoring form, who are scoring goals with speed and skill, playing in a low block, sitting deeper in your own half feels like a kind of a smart move.
Well, it's also like then their midfield has to be like very precise in their balls over the top, because the space is just condensed. And usually your keeper can just like make up that space. But then also the reverse of that, if you're playing a low block, there is transition space for your own team. And in this league, it's very transitional. So I don't think that it's necessarily like park the bus and then we're never going to get out. It's like, well, then you have space.
And you're setting up your own transition.
Correct.
The next possible way, do you think a triple team against Temwa would work?
I think for her, but I do think that the crazy thing about Kansas City is that they just have
somebody else would just score.
Somebody else would score. But I do think if we put maybe like 10 keepers in there, so the lowest block of the low blocks.
This is a new one. So is the formation a 10-1?
Yeah. Just a 10-1. Just boot it. Boot it. You might not win, but you will tie.
I think reasonable. What about if you just like build a fence and you're just like, nope.
Everybody's holding hands around her?
Yes, like Red Rover.
Red Rover, yes. You know, when you're like with a sibling and you're like, don't touch me. And you're like, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. That would be us. Be like, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you.
Well, anyways, I mean, of all the ways to stop Temwa Chawinga, nobody's really figured it out yet. We'll see if somebody does, or if she will break this goal-scoring record that she's currently tied with Sam Kerr with at 18. All respect to Temwa Chawinga. What a great signing for Kansas City. What a great player. It's been so fun to watch her this year. That is our Olipop gut check of the week this week. Let us know if you have any other creative ideas on how to stop Temwa Chawinga below. Hit us up in the comments. Thank you so much to Olipop. I also wanted to mention that the North Carolina Courage clinched playoffs in a win over San Diego. Shout out to our girl Mary Speck and the rest of the Courage for holding strong, going back to playoffs. I love it. And then Portland are still in 7th place, but they lost again. They've lost 4 of the last 5, and they really need to right the ship or they're going to risk falling out of the playoffs, which would be, I think, a huge shock for the Portland Thorns, who have just been a perennial powerhouse in this league. They're just going through kind of a bad spell right now.
It's almost as if Portland and Orlando have switched places. Spooky season.
That is spooky season, Lynn. One of the teams that could potentially push for points to make teams like Portland fall out of playoff contention is Angel City. And this is a longer story here with Angel City this week. They did beat Seattle 1-0. Mary Alice Vignola scored for Angel City, and then the team played really solid defense the rest of the game, despite a ton of Seattle pressure. But Angel City held on. They won those huge 3 points, which are made even more huge because of the bigger story here, which is Angel City's points deduction. According to ESPN, I'm quoting, Angel City have been fined $200,000 and deducted 3 points in the 2024 standings after a National Women's Soccer League investigation uncovered salary cap violations, the league announced Thursday. Woof for the players. I feel like getting a 3-point deduction is brutal. I'll just add on from ESPN, the violations stem from Angel City FC entering into 5-side letters directly with players that affected multi-year agreements and were not disclosed to the league, and deals executed in 2023, so last season, compensating them outside of what was reported to the league in their contracts, the NWSL said in a news release. Lynn, what's your first reaction to this?
It's just unfortunate. I feel for the players. I think that when you go into contract negotiations and you're with a club, as a player, like, I'm trying to make all the money I can possibly make. You're not the one who is in charge of the books. And so the fact that they're getting docked points feels like it's now falling onto the players when it is more of a management issue.
Right. So would you suggest that the fine should be higher, but the points shouldn't be deducted?
Yeah. Or a different structure. Like, I don't think that is fair to the players.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely sucks. Like, I also am like, if a club offered me more money, of course I'd be like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not like,
it's not my Is it my responsibility as a player? I don't necessarily think so.
I don't necessarily think so either. And I don't think that we have shown in a league right now that it is the player's responsibility. I think it's whoever does the contracts.
So I agree with you, Lynn. I also want to go on. Another quote from this article was from an anonymous survey that was given to all of the NWSL GMs. There's this quote that got pulled from the survey that ESPN used to like shed light on what happened with Angel City. And the quote is, this is from an anonymous GM in the league. No, people cheat and they cheat the salary cap. We have visibility to the salary cap and I know what players need to get paid in the league. And I see what they're getting paid elsewhere and it's not possible. We've traded for players before and as part of the trade, we've been informed that they are getting paid other money outside of what's in their contract. So that's an indication that other teams are doing it. This is like a huge quote that we have, obviously, from a GM in the league. So it sounds like this is happening with other teams as well. Mm-hmm. And I actually feel like what you and I should talk about here on this podcast is like, Angel City is this huge commercially successful club.
Yeah.
They were paying players outside of the salary cap. According to this GM anonymous survey, Angel City is not the only place that this is happening. So I think where I'm going with this is like, should everybody be strictly sticking to the salary cap, keeping the salary cap kind of like moderate to continue having parity in the NWSL? I feel like this is a parity conversation.
Correct.
Is parity so important? Or should clubs like Angel City, who have more money, who are valuated at the highest at $250 million, should they just be able to pay these players more and like pay them what they deserve and in turn probably have more success in the league, but potentially have less parity and potentially leave less wealthy clubs behind?
I definitely think there still needs to be a salary cap. I don't think that we just forego salary caps. I think the salary cap should be much higher than it is now. And I think that your last sentence of leaving less wealthy clubs behind would make sense to me. I don't know of another league in the world where there's so much parity as the NWSL. On one hand, it makes it so exciting and fun. But on the other hand, I think that it handcuffs teams that can afford and do all of the things. I think that this is a larger issue than just salary cap. I even look at clubs who can afford private flights for their players. And the league has said, no, because X, Y, and Z can't afford that, you guys can't do this. And I'm like, well, that's not in the player's best interest. So instead of keeping the top teams down, why don't we force the bottom teams to come up? And if they can't come up, then you sell or you unfortunately can't be the team anymore.
You're like, everything you're saying is totally fair. I think it's such an interesting conversation. I actually feel like you and I would both fall somewhere on this scale of like, yeah, parity is important. Paying players a lot is also really important to us. Obviously, we're players and former players. I think the idea that the top clubs are being hamstrung as opposed to the bottom clubs really being like forced to keep up is interesting and maybe not exactly right. Maybe this notion that many clubs or other clubs are having to skirt the rules is a signal to the league that the rules should change a little bit and allow for players to be paid more. You mentioned other leagues, and so I did want to bring in some information about the Women's Super League in England, which has a soft salary cap. And that means that 40% of, it's called turnover, can be spent on wages for the players. Turnover includes the parent club. So like Manchester City, which obviously is a hugely wealthy club, can spend 40% of their turnover on player wages, which is obviously a larger bucket than some of the smaller clubs in the Women's Super League. So that idea, I think, is interesting to me because under a model like that, potentially Angel City's valuation or revenue would indicate how much they can spend on players. And then a club who's maybe making less money or worth less would have a smaller bucket. I don't know if that's fair. It would definitely affect parity, but that's just a different model.
I don't know. I think that this has a couple of buckets or issues, in my personal opinion. Is one, the toll is falling on the players, which I don't feel is right. So the 3 points deducted. I think that salary cap, when you're on a team that wants to be able to pay you more, do I think you need to abide by salary cap? Of course. Do I think the NWSL salary cap should be raised? Of course. And then the third is like the salary cap is a smaller conversation within a larger conversation of the structure of what teams can afford things and what teams can't. And in my mind, the first thing I think of is an LA where they are thriving in marketing and I'm assuming revenue. I obviously don't know their books, but that. And then I look at a Houston. And at what point do you say, Houston, you need to catch up? And the only thing that I would say is being at Gotham and Houston were level. And now I would say Gotham has rise to the occasion and is pouring money in and stuff. And so that's where I'm like, we can't just keep saying, well, we have to have fairness and we have to have blah, 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 because some teams are able to do things and some teams aren't. And at the end of the day, it falls on the players. So
yeah. And I think that kind of brings us back to this 3-point deduction against Angel City. This means that they got their 3 points in their win this weekend. They fought back really hard, but they are still 6 points out of the playoff line at 22 points. They have 3 games left to play. And a lot would have to go right for them to make it at this point. We've already agreed that this kind of punishment falling on the players to maybe keep them out of playoffs is kind of unfair. So Sarah Gordon, center back for Angel City, actually said after the match, really proud of the team. One thing that's been stressing is just controlling what we can. And that's been the message in the group, focusing on what we can do in the field, being proud of our performance. We're all playing for each other. And I think that mentality was key today. I do think in seeing some of that game that Angel City really kind of unified and played together despite this adversity. They held on for the 3 points, and I hope that they can keep fighting for a playoff spot because they're a fun team to watch, and it seems like they're a really tight-knit group. Before we get into some Champions League preview stuff, let me give you a quick update on the WSL in England. Arsenal stumbled against Everton this weekend. It's their second draw of the season in a league where every point matters, as we saw last season with Man City losing to Chelsea on just goal differential. Arsenal having 2 ties in their first 3 games is kind of a big deal.
I would agree. Not to go back to the NWSL, but
take us back
now that we're in this block. But going back to parity, obviously, like the WSL has parity, and they.
Well, that's such a good point, Lynn, because Arsenal is, of course, known as one of the top 3 teams, Arsenal, Chelsea, and Man City. But right now, it's only 3 games into the season. They're sitting in 6th, and Everton is sitting in 12th. And so the idea that Everton, who's in last place, could compete with one of the top 3 teams that's sitting in 6th is so interesting. And is the parity in the WSL growing despite them having a different salary cap model than a league like the NWSL? I say maybe.
3 games in, definitely. Anyways, keep going. But that was on top of my brain, so I had to bring it back. But
we say going. Maybe. We say who knows. Okay, Man City, they won. They won 2-0. They're continuing to cruise. They're doing well. They're sitting in first, though they have a game in hand against Chelsea, whose match was postponed in kind of controversial fashion. When the Champions League draw occurred last week, Chelsea's game ended up getting scheduled for Tuesday. That's against Real Madrid. So Chelsea requested to postpone their Sunday WSL regular season match versus Man United, of course, due to player welfare. Playing Sunday and then Tuesday is literally crazy, even for women's soccer. So this caused kind of a stir on the interwebs. The match was sold out, and beyond the interwebs. I'm sure this is actually causing quite a stir in real life as well. The match was sold out. The draw results weren't obviously known before last Friday when they happened, but The potential match calendar had been out for a year, so I think there's just some drama around like, should this game have been moved sooner?
Yeah, I really feel like it's not that dramatic. You're going to play the same game. It's just moving so players have more than 48 hours to recover.
Honor the tickets that were sold, reschedule it. Yes, it's unfortunate for the fans. I think many people would agree that playing 2 games in 48 hours is kind of crazy. We're going to circle back to some upcoming WSL matches ahead this weekend. Hopefully nothing gets last minute postponed. But I want to spend some time talking Champions League, Lynn, because the group stage is beginning today.
Champions!
Oh, I was going to say, how does the song go? It's the champions! do, 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 do!
Champions! Oh my gosh, look at how much I'm sweating.
I'm sweating a lot in my armpits too, but I have nothing on under my sweatshirt. So
don't show us that. It's not that kind of show.
Nope. Okay, Champions League group stage begins today. There are 16 teams who have qualified for the group stage from all over Europe. The top teams in England, like Man City, Chelsea, and Arsenal, that I cannot seem to stop talking about, plus Olympique Lyon from France, Barcelona and Real Madrid from Spain, Wolfsburg and Bayern Munich from Germany, et cetera, et cetera. There's even the first ever team to qualify out of Turkey, Galatasaray, and the teams qualified either automatically or through a series of qualifying games. And then about a week ago, the teams were drawn into groups of 4. They'll each play 6 group stage matches this fall. So in your group, there's 3 other teams, and you play each of them twice. You have a home game and an away game. So 6 games in the group stage. It goes from October. There's like a set of games in October, a set of games in November, and a set of games in December. Did that all make sense?
Yes. Groups of 4 teams play each team twice.
Got it. So mathematically, that means that there are 8 games over the next 2 days.
Which is fun because there's a lot of soccer to watch. That's what we're all getting at.
So many numbers in this section. So unnecessary.
Thank goodness you are going to do it for them. You are going to put the days and the times out.
I just wanted to give everybody the facts. Dates, times, numbers, games, teams. There are 8 games in the next 2 days. The ones that I will definitely be watching, circled in red on my calendar, are Chelsea, obviously. Chelsea versus Real Madrid, which is today at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on DAZN. And then tomorrow, Bayern Munich is playing Arsenal at 12:45 p.m. Eastern Time. And Man City is playing Barcelona at 3 p.m. Eastern Time.
My favorite team.
Man City is your favorite team. How exciting, Lynn. Are you going to be cheering them on?
Yeah, definitely my new favorite team.
Oh my gosh, super exciting. So as soon as you're done listening to this podcast on this fine Tuesday morning, go and watch Chelsea versus Real Madrid at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And again, all of these Champions League games are on DAZN.
Who do you think is going to win?
Chelsea, Real Madrid. It's definitely like a tough test for Chelsea. It's their first game of this group stage of the tournament. But I think it will be a great way. Like, they have a new manager in Sonia Bonpastor. Mm-hmm. It'll be a good test to see how they measure up against like a pretty solid European opponent. Chelsea obviously has stars like Lauren James, Lucy Bronze, Aaron Cuthbert. They're under a new manager, and they've won like every trophy that there is to win except the Champions League trophy. So I always get excited to watch Chelsea in Champions League because I feel like it's just one of those like elusive things to the club. I feel like Real Madrid is a strong opponent. They have one of the most exciting young players in the world, Colombian striker Linda Caicedo. Plus, one of my favorite midfielders to watch, who I actually played with at Man City, she's now on Real Madrid, Caroline Ware. It's a good matchup. It's going to be a fun game to watch. I feel like Chelsea's going to win. I feel like Chelsea will win their group and get out of the group stage just fine. But Real Madrid will probably come in second. So it's definitely a good game to watch.
What do you think the score is going to be?
2-0 Chelsea.
Heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in the old Champions League group stage game. And then tomorrow, what I think everybody should watch is Georgia Stanway's Bayern Munich versus Emily Fox's Arsenal at 12:45 p.m. Eastern Time. And then, again, we have this freaking incredible game, Man City versus Barcelona at 3 p.m. I hope nobody has a job out there because we all just have to stay home and watch TV at 3 o'clock.
Exactly. My favorite team, Man City, from the AI.
Lynn's favorite team, according to ChatGPT. This game, Man City versus Barcelona, is like a huge game. It's a battle of the Titans. Man City have 2 extraordinary strikers in Viv Miedema and Bunny Shaw, both who played limited minutes in Man City's regular WSL season win this past weekend. I bet they played those limited minutes to prepare for this upcoming Champions League game. And then meanwhile, Barcelona are obviously a football powerhouse. They're coming off a weekend where they beat Madrid CFF 8-1 in their domestic league. They've won 2 Champions Leagues in a row. Obviously, everybody's going to recognize these names from the Spanish national team: Alexia Putellas, Aitana Bonmatí, Salma Parayuelo, not to mention other internationals like Kira Walsh, Caroline Graham-Hansen, and Fridolina Rolfo. Barcelona is so stacked. It's a really tough opponent for Man City, especially in this first game. So my question for you, Lynn, is thinking about this kind of like an international tournament, which we've both played group stage games in. When your first match, we mentioned this a little bit earlier, when your first game is really tough and you could lose, Man City could lose to Barcelona, does it set the tone in a good way for the rest of the tournament? Like, we learned from this, we're going to be better moving forward? Or does it set the tone like, we don't match up?
My initial thought is I kind of go to the reverse of that, is like if you were to play a weaker opponent in your first round, that could have like false confidence. So part of me thinks that, like playing the hardest opponent first could be better. What are your thoughts?
I always think about my 2 world tournament experiences. 2019 Women's World Cup, we beat Thailand 13-0, set us up. We went on to win, and it set this really nice tone of like, we're strong and confident. And then 2021 Olympics, first game we lose to Sweden, and we never really found our footing again. We lost to Sweden 3-0, and we were kind of like slapped in the face a little bit. And so this goes against my point earlier, where I said sometimes losing early can be the best lesson.
I will say, I think that there's a difference between tournament play and when you're playing a season and then going into tournament play. I think when you're playing 20-something games, like at some point, I think it's necessary to lose, versus in a tournament where you don't have time
to get that momentum back.
Yeah. So I think that playing a tough game first, now that I've actually had a moment to think about it, is tough.
It's tough. Tough.
It's just tough, like all around tough.
It's tough, but it's going to be an awesome game. I think it's such a great showcase of Champions League football for all of us to watch. So I can't wait to watch that one. Another one of the major talking points with Champions League is just, it's like the main conversation going around in all football right now. The added game midweek coupled with potential Champions League international travel. And that's something, Lynn, that you're actually dealing with right now. We mentioned at the top of this podcast, Gotham is competing in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. You went to Jamaica last week. You played a midweek game. Then you came back. You played in your regular season NWSL game. What does the international travel add to a week of 3 games?
Toughness, tiredness. I think that when you don't have the ability to rotate a roster, it's tough. I think there's, again, we've talked about this a million times on this podcast, but resources. Are you flying commercially? Are you flying a charter? Does that charter have space for you to lay down? Do you
how many massage therapists do you have?
Exactly. Can you go through border control easily? Or is it that like a whole situation? I'm assuming if anybody's traveled internationally, that could take hours sometimes. So all of those things added up. How far are they traveling? I think us versus Europe, we got to go far. Jamaica's far. We went to Costa Rica. That's really far. It's definitely an added stress. I think like being able to be very professional and making sure you're focused on your recovery is key. But girls, I feel you. It's tough.
Lynn feels the Champions League traveling, girls. You mentioned having a deep bench being super important. You can rotate the squad. My other question is, when it comes to that, how do you prioritize?
Well, exactly. I think at some point you have to kind of pick.
Meaning, Viv Miedema and Bunny Shaw didn't start this past weekend in the WSL regular season game for Man City because maybe their coach and the team was like, we have to play Barcelona on freaking Tuesday. Like, we need to save some legs for that. And luckily, Man City won anyway. They have a deep roster. They can afford to do that. But down the line, there might be a more difficult decision that's like, this is a game for the league title and this is a game for the Champions League title. And at that point, can players just kind of do both?
I guess we'll find out.
Okay, coming up this weekend, we have a huge WSL matchup between Arsenal and Chelsea on Saturday morning at 8:45 a.m. Eastern Time, a totally reasonable hour, which we'll be up watching with coffee. You should check our weekly game day graphic, which will come up usually on Fridays on the Women's Game social channels. We'll give you all the info on times of games, how to watch. It's very handy, and I use it at least 10 times a week. There are also a couple of interesting NWSL matchups. Orlando have clinched the Shield and a playoff spot alongside the Spirit, Gotham, Kansas City, and North Carolina. So 3 playoff spots remain. Currently next up in 6th place with 32 points, we have Chicago. Then 7th through 12th goes Portland on 28 points, Bay on 28 points, Louisville on 25 points, San Diego on 22 points, Angel City on 22 points, and Utah on 21 points. 9 points up for grabs for some of these teams if they win out all 3 of their games. So that kind of swing could change this order up a lot depending on like who's hot right now.
Who's hot, who's not. Go ahead.
I wish that was a song.
It is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Can you sing more?
Who's hot, who's not. Who's hot?
No, I can't.
No, I can't.
Well, tell us about being who's hot, who's not. Gotham 2023. Like, you guys barely squeaked into playoffs. You went through this kind of scrappy last couple games of your season. You got in and then you won the championship. So what's your advice, or like what's the mentality you'd expect to see from these teams who are scrapping to try to get in?
Well, I'm not giving anybody advice at this moment besides Gotham. But I think their mentality should be win the games. I think they should focus on each game. Don't think about playoffs right now. I would say win the game that's in front of you.
Yeah. My advice, I think, would just be, go out there.
Just give up now.
Play like it's your last. Play like it's your last.
My advice is give up now and get out of the way.
Lynn Williams, advice to other teams. Give up now and get out of the way. Gotham's coming for you, ladies.
That's right.
Okay, well, we're about to find out if Lynn would say that to me and Becky when we get stuck in a zombie apocalypse together. We need to go to the inbox. We got an email. I need to shout out Zach, Pembroke, Massachusetts. He was writing in from home of Poopsie's Pizza Lynn, my favorite pizza place in the whole entire world. Zach, thank you so much for writing. I hope to see you at Poopsie's sometime. Zach writes in and asks us, in a zombie apocalypse, what role do you, Becky, and Lynn play in contributing to your group survival? Lynn, is this a give up and get out of the way moment?
No. I think that we have to come together.
That is what I like to hear.
These are the things we need to do to survive, I think. We need weapons.
Okay.
Definitely need weapons. We need food. And we need shelter.
Okay.
Safety. Safe.
A safe haven.
A safe haven.
So do we split up?
No.
I think our role, I'm kind of thinking about this as pilot, flight attendant, passenger roles.
Okay.
Like, but in this instance, it's like killer of zombies, finder of
food,
resources, and then like the like class clown, like team morale.
Okay, well, I definitely think that
I don't know if those were good categories, but like basically like probably Becky is like the leader. Like probably Becky is like our wise elder making all of the like sage decisions.
Yeah. Some reason though, I feel like I want to say you're going to bring comic relief, but then I think also you're going to be too stressed to do that. So I'm not sure.
I know. Like, do you notice that I just like basically gave myself the role of the class clown without insinuating that was my role? But like, obviously that's the role I wanted.
Yeah, but then I think you're going to be too stressed. I've seen you in a stressful situation. It's not great.
It's stress jester.
Okay. So I think that we need to...
We don't know, Zach. We have literally no idea where to go with
every time I watch a zombie movie, though, it's in a city. So we need to get out of the city.
Perfect. Come to Vermont.
And we need to build a shelter. I know how to build things. I'll be the builder.
Yeah, you're the handyman.
Yes. I'm the handyman. Sam is the comic relief and Becky is the logic.
I think that works. Obviously, I can also do other things, but like I think my like spiritual role is just like emotional guidance and humor.
Emotional guidance. I do have a lot of logic, though. I feel like I'm hitting with logic.
Yeah, but like you and I would disagree a lot, so like we would have to just like
100%.
Defer to Becky.
We'd be like, Becky, what do you
Becky,
think?
We're fighting.
And she'd be like, come on. And build that. And you're like, okay.
All right. Well, I like really need to know how we should have broken this question down. So I'm hoping that people can write in and tell us how to think about this. Zach, yourself included, maybe a little bit more like detail next time.
We need like more of like a multiple choice.
Like pilot, flight attendant, passenger would be a good reference point. If anybody wants to contribute to this conversation, you can write us with questions at womensgamemib@menandboys.com. Email us anytime. We'll try to read it on the show. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the episode. I'm very disappointed to be leaving you, Lynn, as this time with you each week is just a sacred hour and a half for me, your blessed friend.
I bless you. But you are coming today. So I will be seeing you very, very soon. I'm very
Big
excited.
time.
And maybe your favorite pizza place will change.
Maybe it will. Who knows? I do want to say my good vibe for everybody is that I hope on their birthday they get to have a piece of Funfetti cake.
Have you?
It is not yet my birthday, and maybe
Well-
I'll have a piece of Funfetti cake. I don't know. My birthday is not yet.
Remember when you made a Funfetti cake for yourself and just ate the whole thing?
Which time? Well, I made it for your birthday, and then like obviously you weren't here. I just made it for the podcast to show it as a picture, so I got to eat it. It was sick. Do you have a good vibe?
My good vibe is just get out. Just get outside. Just explore and get outside. That's my good vibe.
You're bringing some weird vibes today, Lynn.
Well, yesterday I was outside and it was beautiful. And I was just
Oh.
walking around the city and having a great time. And me and Marley said, oh, we're going to go shopping. And naturally, we didn't buy anything, but we just got out there. And that made me feel good because I was just outside. So just do that.
Do it.
Just do what you want.
Funfetti cake, get outside. That's it for this week's episode of Good Vibes FC. I really hope that you're subscribed to our podcast feed, our YouTube channel, turn on your notifications. If you are not subscribed, subscribe right now, you little buttercup. It is available wherever you listen to podcasts and obviously on YouTube, as I said, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Threads, Women's Game MIB. Everybody knows the drill. Thank you all so much for all of your support, your comments, your emails. I love reading them. I love interacting with you all. So thank you. Later this week, we have an interview with Arsenal and England winger Beth Mead, and we talk about her childhood playing soccer, her upcoming Champions League season with Arsenal, and her mentality when facing difficult moments. It's an emotional interview. It's so lovely, and I'm excited for everyone to hear it. I really love Beth. She's such a great player, and it was really nice to talk to her. So listen to that wherever you get your podcast or watch it on YouTube. All right, everybody, we're out of here.
Goodbye. I'm Lynn Williams.
And I'm Sam Lewis, and this is Good Vibes FC. Love you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.